Alright, welcome back guys for another tier list video. It's been a little bit since I've made one, and this is a list that people have definitely been asking for. And I'm going to do the maps. All these maps here in AoE Apologize, the icons are a little bit small, but there are a lot of maps, and I will do my best to explain them in case you haven't played on them yourself. This was made by Grisha, yeah, so thanks to him for putting this on Tier Maker. And before I jump into it, I just want to clarify what my criteria for a good map is. First and foremost, it needs to be balanced. Like, a good map is balanced. You don't have generation that massively favors one player over the other, which just leads to really, really awful games, and is kind of the cardinal sin in map making. Two, is it fun? There are a lot of maps that can be balanced, but are not very fun. Lead to super campy 12 bajillion hour games where nothing is happening. I mean, some people like that, but I personally do not. Or you could have it too far in the other way where you just don't have enough resources, or the map is just too crazy aggressive, scrappy, where it is also unfun in the other way. So that is obviously also important. Three, is it diverse? Are there multiple viable civilizations or strategies or anything like that? If the map only has one thing that you can do, I tend to not think it is as good as, other maps that could be. And then lastly, I would say, is it competitively viable? If a map is competitively viable, then it will almost certainly shoot up to over here, which is pretty much only if they have all of those other things. If they have all those other boxes checked and are interesting, I would say. Because some maps are just kind of clones of Arabia or other sorts of maps, and they're probably not as good. But all that aside, let's jump into this, because we've got a lot of maps to go through. I have at least seen or played games on all of these, so I do know them. Unfortunately, I have played some of these not so good maps, but yeah, let's get into it. Starting with Acropolis. I'm going to put that up in A tier. It's a very aggressive map, but not too aggressive. You start on top of, well, an Acropolis, and it's very open, lots of scouts, but there's lots of viable things you can do. And it was in the map pool a little bit ago, so I'm sure a lot of you guys know it, and I think it is just a good, solid map. More aggressive Arabia clone. Alpine Lakes, going, I think, to D tier. Oh boy. Can have really imbalanced shorefish spawns, and yeah, it's not very fun. You just pick Indians or Japanese most of the time, and a lot of weird hills, and yeah, that was not one of the better map pool maps. Arabia, yep, going right up to S tier. I know some people don't like Arabia, but most of the community does, and it is the standard map in the game, so yeah, can't really argue against that. Archipelago, I'm going to put in C. If you don't know this map, you can spawn on... There are a bunch of islands, and you can spawn with a teammate on your island, you can spawn with an enemy on your island, meaning it's not very balanced. It can be very asymmetrical in terms of, well, okay, two people have an island together, and they're teammates, so they can just trade super easily, and nobody on your team has an island together, so that can be kind of unfortunate. But it is, in my opinion, honestly, pretty fun if you're not playing a super serious game. And yeah, I mean, it's not the worst map ever. It's, other than that, a fairly normal-ish water map. It's been around forever, but it's not super balanced, and I wouldn't really want it in any map pool. Arena, going right to Clown Town. Another S tier map. It pretty much checks all of the boxes in terms of, is it fair, is it diverse, are there lots of viable strategies and civs, and is it competitive? All that stuff. Again, some people don't like it. It is a little slow to get up and running, but if you compare that to the average map in this map pool, Arena is way, 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 way better in most situations. Oh yeah, I haven't said, I'm going to be thinking about the maps in terms of both 1v1s and team games, and just trying to see the map in its best light. So like, Arena 1v1 is way better than Arena team games, at least in my opinion, but I'm thinking about it mostly from a 1v1 perspective, because we kind of want to give the map the benefit of the doubt. Otherwise, like, so many of the maps are going to be way down here. Baltic. Solid A tier map. T-West, angrily shakes his fist in the distance. Baltic, pretty standard hybrid-y water map where you have a very aggressive middle that you fight over. kind of a weird shaped lake a lot of the times, but you know, it's a good water like hybrid map. You can go on land if you're, say, losing on water. Some people don't like those sorts of maps, but as far as like this sort of thing goes, Baltic is a pretty good map, definitely competitively viable. Oh boy, Black Forest. This one is very opinion based, and like some people will put Black Forest in S tier, some people would put it in F tier. I'm going to compromise and put it in B tier. There certainly is aggression possible in Black Forest, very much so, but you can also get super long, campy, stalematey games. Some people love it, especially lower level players think, you know, you can wall on it and boom and get to your epic late game stuff. This one is definitely going to be one of the most subjective ones. It's just depending on if you like the really long, grindy game, so I'm going to try and appease everybody by putting it in B tier. Oh, Bog Islands, that's in the current map pool. Oh. D tier, pushing F tier, honestly. It's not a balanced map. It's not a very fun map. The pathing issues with ships in the game right now, it's kind of a nightmare, honestly. Ships can get stuck in the forests in the middle a lot of the time. Fish generation can be quite unfair. I do have a map guide for this map that I posted not too long ago, so if you are going to brave it and play this map, there is that for you, but not the best map ever. Bogland. This is one I actually had to go back into DE and look up, and I think I've only seen it once. It's kind of like... Oh, it's another... It's one of the other ones, Ravines. It's kind of like Ravines. You have like a hill you start with, and it's a nomad start, but all your villagers are right together, and you have like a mill and a tower. It's kind of weird. I'm going to put it in C tier. C tier is probably going to be like the weird maps that aren't like awful, but not amazing. Yeah, it's just kind of a weird map, and I don't really know what the point of it is, but nah. Budapest. I'm going to put you in B tier. It's not a bad map. Oh, look how balanced we are so far. Seems good. It's the 2TC start map, as you can see in the little icon here, hopefully. You have 4 lakes in the corners, and you can like safely gather fish. It's a very fast start, but can be kind of a nightmare to manage. Chinese used to be super overpowered on it. I don't think they are anymore, because you would get double the villagers. Like, because you'd have 2 TCs, you'd start with 12 villagers as opposed to, say, 9. But I think you do start with 9 villagers right now, making that more fair, because it's not like you get double negative resources. Same goes for Mayans. Huns, I would say, are probably the best map, or best civ for the map, just because you don't start housed or anything like that. And you can more easily manage your early eco, and you have a lot of, you know, good things to do on a hybridy map. But yeah, I mean, as far as 2 TC starts go, it's probably one of the better ones. ES Canals. Oh boy. Probably going to put you in D tier. It can be pretty imbalanced. It's not a very fun map. It can be really choke pointy with waterways, and it's... Yeah, it's just not the greatest. Lots of weird little areas where it can be really choke pointy, or you can be stuck because you don't have any ships or anything like that. Not the greatest map. Capricious. Just a lot of different food sources. I'm going to put it in C tier. Not a whole lot to say about the map. It's just kind of there. A little bit extra food. It can be pretty imbalanced with some water spawns, but I mean, it's not like the worst thing ever. Just not all that great. Sonatas. I am going to put it in B tier, not because it isn't the greatest map ever, but because it's kind of boring. It's pretty much just Arabia, but you sometimes... I mean, you have, like, ponds scattered throughout that are making it a little bit harder to wall. Like, it's competitively viable, it's just not very... Or it is balanced, it's just not very interesting, I guess, compared to standard Arabia. And I would say that any map that is B tier or above is at least something I would be okay with in the map pool, if not wanting it there all the time. City of Lakes. Ooh, boy. Putting it in F tier? Yeah, I think so. It's probably the worst map we've seen so far. It's like taking all of the things that are wrong with Canals and making it even worse. You have tiny little choke points, you have completely imbalanced water generation, And yeah, you can have like a great fish boom, or you can have no fish, or you can have very few resources. It is an absolutely awful map. Do not recommend. Coastal, the default map. Like, literally the default map in the game. I'm going to put it in C tier. It's not the worst map ever, but the water generation can be pretty imbalanced in terms of one person having a great fish boom and one person getting almost nothing. This will be a very common recurring theme throughout all these maps. So yeah, I mean, it's not the worst map ever. It's okay. Continental... definitely, I would say it's very similar to Coastal, but a little bit worse, I would say. Just because it has the same problem in terms of imbalanced spawns, but it also can be super choke pointy, as it is in the map pool right now. Video on it should be coming out pretty soon, I believe. At least in terms of when I'm recording this. It might be already out by the time you guys see it. But yeah, I mean, it's just like a hybrid map. Sometimes you have lakes, sometimes you have bays. It's not very consistent. It's not all that fun, but eh. Crater Lake? Oh boy, where's my S tier? Right at the top now. F tier. It's an absolutely awful map. You have like a mountainous island with a bunch of gold in it. That's most of the gold. And it can be like right next to one person and then super far away from the other. I mean, even in the picture, it's not very fair looking as it's right next to red, but far away from blue or even yellow. Yeah, it is usually joked as like one of the worst maps. It's like one of the prime examples. Dingos. There are a lot of wolves around it, which can make it pretty imbalanced. And then you have like all the players, at least most of the players, with little canals, as you can see, or like inlets, making it pretty easy to wall. Then you go on water. Like it's just not a very good map. Yeah, like it's like a hybrid map, but worse than, you know, even Coastal and Continental. Fortress, Regicide Fortress. I'm gonna put it up in A tier. RF is, again, it's a little bit, I guess, up to personal preference. I wouldn't recommend playing this in anything other than Regicide, just because it can be a very slow start otherwise. But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do on the map. I think there are at least several civs that are viable right now after Chinese got nerfed. And it's just it's a good, classic, standard competitive map. It used to be in like every single tournament way back in the day, but thankfully we are seeing it a little bit more sparsely. But I think, you know, in low doses, RF is actually one of my favorite maps, both to see and play. You start with a castle, and of course a king if you are playing it in Regicide. Some farms, some towers, all that stuff. Four Lakes. A tier. Probably the best hybrid map. I'm getting a little bored of it. Is it even still in the map pool? I don't think it is. Just because we saw it so much in recent tournaments. But it's pretty diverse in terms of what you can do. You can go for all the pawns, you can try and go for like a fast castle, you can go aggressive. There's just a lot of different things you can do on it. It is a good map. I wouldn't want to play it all the time, but as far as hybrid maps go, it's definitely one of the best ones. Ghost Lake. Ghost Lake. I'm going to put it in B tier. It could be pushing A tier. By the way, this isn't in any particular order, guys. I'm just putting the newer ones on the end. I don't think there's any point in, like, differentiating between, like, oh, is Ghost Lake better than Sonatas? Like, it doesn't really matter. It's a little bit wall-y, fast castle-y with archer civs, but it's not that bad. It can be pretty open. You can go aggressive if you want, but Britons are definitely very strong here because there are extra sheep that can spawn everywhere. Britain's going to love that, and they love going for a Josh Fast Castle or something like that. But you can do things like counterpick Huns against that and still be pretty well off. It's a solid map. It's not amazing, not horrible. Golden Pit. Same story. It's actually pretty similar, despite the middle being, you know, with all the gold and whatnot. It's too wall fast castle-y for my taste right now. If it was harder to wall and was more open like Gold Rush, but had otherwise all of the features of Golden Pit, I would probably put it in A tier. But as it stands, I'm going to put it in B tier just because it can be a little wall fast castle-y, but it is a pretty fair and balanced competitive map. You know, it's one that's fine to have in the map pool every now and again. I think we could have maybe gone another month without it, but yeah, I'd definitely love to see them change the wood lines. But other than that, I think it's a pretty solid map, and better than Gold Rush. Going to be a little controversial. I'm going to put it in C tier. I think it's just kind of a worse version of Golden Pit, even with Golden Pit being more fast castle-y. I don't like the idea of there being all the gold in the middle, and you get the tactical advantage of having all the hills in the middle. Now there is, like sometimes you get like a big hill around the middle, where you can be trying to go from level ground, but I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of it. The gold can spawn really close to one player, not the other, but oh yeah, there's also pawns, which can be kind of imbalanced as well. Not my favorite map ever. In my opinion, Golden Pit is just a better version of Gold Rush, if they just remove those stupid, like, 2 forests at the front of your race. Rage! Golden Swamp, B tier probably. Not my favorite map ever. It's kind of like Gold Rush, but you have the mangrove forest water aspect in the middle. But you have enough gold to get you started for a while, and it's not the worst map ever. It was in the map pool for a couple months. It's kind of like Cup from Hidden Cup. Yeah, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the map. You know, it's all right. ES Graveyards. Yeah, you're going to D tier. This isn't the graveyards that is sometimes featured in tournaments. This one has pawns in it, and can be very imbalanced, and there aren't a lot of viable civs. Even like the good versions of graveyards, there aren't a lot of viable civs, as there are, I think, like 10 or 11 relics on the map. So Aztecs and Lithuanians are obviously having a field day. Yeah, I mean, other than that, it's just like a little bit more closed version of a land map. Nothing too crazy. Hamburger! I'm actually going to put this in C tier, not because it is remotely competitively viable, but because it's a classic, like, fun, community gamey sort of map. And it can have some crazy games, it can be fun. Obviously, the wood line's all in the middle, and you can wall the edges, but then you have the water, and then you have the outside with the extra resources. You know, it's a fun map that you can play, but it is not remotely competitively viable. Hideout. I'm going to put it in A tier. Pretty solid map. It's one that you don't want in the map pool all the time, but, you know, you're fine having it here and there. It's kind of like inverted arena with palisade walls. So you can go for fast castle relatively easily, but there are situations where, like Men-at-Arm and Tower Aggression can really punch you in the face. So in that way, it is a bit more aggressive than arena. However, especially like with the way some resources spawn, it can be kind of unfair in a lot of situations. With like one player having easier access to golds, and there is less gold on it overall for some reason. And there are some weird things about the map, but overall it's a pretty solid map. But just don't want to play it all the time. Oh boy, Highland. Like 6-year-old me would put it right here. It was the map I played all the time as a kid. But now that I know better, going right to D tier, it can be super, super campy. I mean, it is. You just have the shallow crossings, and there's no other way to get to your opponent, and there isn't water like all the way around, so you can just boom away. And if you don't have control of water, it is almost impossible to ever push your opponent. And yeah, it is not a very good map. I mean, the only reason it's not an F tier, I would say, is because it is pretty balanced at least. But yeah, not one I would recommend. Hill Fort. Gonna put it in C tier. I think the map works a lot better for team games than it does for 1v1s. Just because in team games you have, you know, the shared hill fort, so, you know, you have a more interesting dynamic there. As far as 1v1s goes, it just kind of is heavily favoring, like, fast castle unique unit or fast castle crossbow civs. I don't know. It's not my favorite map for 1v1. It's okay for team games. The not having forge bushes is kind of weird, but, you know, it's not the worst map ever. Islands. Probably going to be a bit controversial, but I'm going to put it in A tier. I think as far as standard water maps goes, regular islands is my favorite. You have the neutral islands with little gold you can fight over. I think it is more diverse in terms of you can open defensively, in terms of like back docking, you can open aggressively with, you know, forward dock and like Mongols or something. I mean, I like it a lot of people don't like water maps, and if you don't like water maps, then you would never put this above D tier, but for what it is, I think Islands is good. And I personally do like water maps, in moderation. Kilimanjaro! It is currently in the map pool as I record this. D tier for me. I don't like the map. You only have one elephant, so if you get lamed, you are on a one-way trip to Frown Town. And like most of the wood is in the middle, so it like encourages map control and aggression, but then you have ponds that can have shorefish, which can be really imbalanced. You know, it's like getting all of like your wood denied is just not very fun. And like, yeah, there's lots of raiding potential. Like, it's not the worst map ever. Like, I'd probably put it in like higher D tier. It's better than like Bog Islands, but I wouldn't really even say it's D tier or C tier. Maybe it's C tier. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, I would say it's more like these maps than it is these maps, but still not my favorite. Lombardi, solid B tier map. It's pretty much an Arabia clone for 1v1s, but in team games, you start really close together with your town centers, with, you know, you and your teammates. So, solid map for team games, pretty much just an Arabia clone for 1v1, just a little bit of a bit more interesting dynamic. But yeah, I mean, other than that, not too much to talk about. You know, it's a solid map. Mangrove Jungle. Oh, you bet we're going to F tier. It's like Black Forest, but you have fewer pathways, and everything is mangrove terrain. Yeah, that's not very fun. It's just ships everywhere. You only have your little bit of starting land. Yeah, it's like taking all of the worst parts of Black Forest and mixing them with mangrove terrain. Ugh. Medi and Baltic are pretty much the same thing. Medi just has a little bit more land and has a bit more ovular lake in the middle. But pretty much same story for these maps. Mega Random. Now, this is such a weird one. I'm going to put it in C tier for the sole reason that because it is so... you don't know what you're getting going into it. You can't really plan a civilization, so what you do is you just pick Mongols most of the time, or Mayans, just because those civs tend to do best on like maps in general. Like, you can have a lot of hunt, and then Mongols are just like way better. Some people really like Mega Random. I'm not really one of those people. Maybe if you knew what the map was going into, or like what the variant was, but yeah, then it's not really Mega Random. I mean, it's not like the worst thing ever, but it's not my cup of tea. Metropolis. I'm going to also put it in C tier. It's another 2TC start map, but with a big lake in the middle. We used to see this from time to time in team game tournaments. I would say it's probably worse than Budapest, just because it's a lot less aggressive, but it does have, I think, the interesting aspect where like some people go on water, some people go on land, and it can be a pretty, you know, nice defensive, epic game map sort of thing. It's not the worst. Migration. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Again, some people really don't like the map, some people do. You start on a little island with, you know, a decent amount of starting resources, but 30 to 40 minutes you're going to run out and you're going to want to go to the middle area. It can have very weird spawn, or very weird spawns with like really thin, tiny little peninsulas like this for like one player, and then a nice big thick wood for the other. I'd say it's a map that I like more for team games than for 1v1, just because I think you have a bit more of an interesting dynamic with the middle becoming more relevant more often, because oftentimes in a 1v1 the game is over before the middle is relevant, so yeah. Mongolia. I'm going to put it in B tier. It's not the worst map ever. It's kind of like Arabia, but just with more cliffs, and it's more choke pointy and campy. It's not the most campy map, though. You can still do aggression in a lot of cases, especially in more modern versions of the map. Like, it used to be like way more cliffy than it is now. You know, it's not the worst map ever, but it's just kind of like a little bit more stally, campy version of Arabia. Mountain Pass, oh boy. That's in the map pool right now, and I am not a fan. Right to D tier with you. Yeah, it is nomad start, but you only really have sheep and a few deer as your consistent food resources. Gold and stone are very sparse for some reason. There's a lot of weird elevation stuff, which can make placing town centers more difficult. I mean, you just pick Britons and Tatars because they're like the sheep civs, right? I don't like the map. It's boring. It's just boring. Mountain Ridge. This one, I think actually might be the only one that I have never played. So maybe people have had good experiences on the map. I did look at the map. I did a few generations of it before before I started making this video. It's kind of like a standardy land map, but there are some hills in the middle, and there are occasional ponds with deep water that you cannot dock, but there are like shorefish everywhere in those ponds. And then you only have one boar, and there's also swamp terrain, which makes it a bit harder to build. It can be pretty inconsistent. I was just looking at it and thinking about in terms of placing markets in team games, it would be not that great. And just having that extra random factor with the fish seems, but it's not the worst thing ever. Nile Delta, ooh boy, we're going right to F tier with this one. Yeah, you start on an island with pretty much no resources, and then have to migrate all the way to the sides here, and there are some other islands as well. It is famously an awful, awful map. Nomad. I am actually going to put it in S tier. Probably going to be controversial, and I would say that for 1v1s I'd put it in B tier, but for team games I'd put it in S tier, because Nomad team games, in my opinion, are really, really fun. The imbalanced start potential is heavily mitigated by the fact that you have a bunch of teammates and a bunch of enemies. So if one person has a good start, and then, it's likely that another person on the other team has a good start. And, we had the whole big Nomad thing last summer, which is one of the big things that grew my channel. So I guess I have fond memories of it that way. But I think Nomad team games are a lot of fun to both watch and play. But yeah, not really the greatest map for 1v1s. Oasis. C tier. Kind of thinking of it as like Black Forest, but a little bit worse. Because it's even more campy, because you only have the sides in which you can attack. There's also the generation problems where one person can be right next to the Oasis and another person can be far away from it. I mean, it's not like the worst map ever. You'll see it from time to time in tournaments. There was a famous ECL game on it that was like super, super long, and like water control became important. It's not really my favorite. Pacific Islands are right to F tier. It's like you have a bunch of little islands, kind of like Archipelago, but for some reason you have like no wood on the map. Like there is almost no wood on a map that is islands-y, and you need to build ships and stuff. It is not a good map. Not at all. No. Paradise Island, I'm going to put it in D tier. It's another ensemble map, like custom map. You start on an island where there can be pretty imbalanced fish generation. And then there's like a lake in the middle with an island in that lake that has a bunch of relics and like jaguars and stuff out on it. I mean, it's not like the worst map ever, but I feel like there isn't anything that's like especially good about the map. You have like a bunch of forage bushes that are like weirdly scattered around your base. And you start like right next to the water. Like it's not like good really in any way. Pilgrims of T90 fame. I'm going to put it in C tier. I think you can think of Pilgrims in a similar vein to Hamburger, where it's not a competitive map. You'd never want to see it in tournaments, but for like community games and just for funsies games, it can be a lot of fun for like diplomacy and stuff like that. You have the water, which takes up around half the map with little islands where all the players start, and then you have a big empty continent that everyone has to migrate to very quickly. So yeah, I mean, it's not a competitive map, but it is definitely a fun community game sort of map. ES Prairie. Probably also going to go in D tier. It's not the versions of prairie that we see in tournaments where there isn't any water. In this version, there is water, and it can just be really weirdly imbalanced in terms of some players having like a big lake that they can fish boom in, and others you can't. And then other than that, it's just kind of a very, very open map that doesn't really offer a lot of unique or interesting gameplay to it. I'm not even the biggest fan of this map in tournaments. Oh yeah, you start with 2 scouts. I mean, that's really like the only interesting thing about it. But even then, it makes it a lot more limited because you then just pick Huns a lot of the time because you don't start housed like all the other civs, or you pick Mongols because there's a lot of hunt. I just don't think the map really adds a lot. Ravine. Whoa. I moved it. Ravine's also going to put in C tier. We saw this in Hidden Cup 3. You start on a hill that is immediately surrounded by, well, a ravine, and it has a lot of deer in it. You have a couple forage bush patches, but other than that, the map is fairly wallable. It's alright. It used to be like a Mongols or Franks spam fest because of all the extra hunt and berries, but then they limited those resources a little bit, and then it just became kind of a closed-off map, like just a more closed land map, and I don't really think it, again, it doesn't really add a whole lot. But, you know, it's not the worst map ever. Rivers, right to D tier. Again, another map that can be very, very imbalanced. You'll have river crossings, but you'll have random islands where you can... I think you'll always have 2 islands in the middle, but that can make your first dock really unfair if, like, you just have no fish nearby. Outside, you know, the map is surrounded by water, so it can be even more imbalanced because, like, if one person has way more wood than the other, it's a lot more likely than even, say, islands, if, you know, the islands generations are not bad. Where's islands? Here it is. Yeah, it's just not a great map. Salt Marsh. If this was AOC, it would be an F tier. Now it's probably between C and D tier. You know what? Let's put it in C tier. It's not that bad. It is still a little bit asymmetrical, but the map is mostly shallows. I think all of the fish were removed on it. So it's now a much more fair map with just like a big shallowsy thing in the middle. You can go for water to naval units, but they will always be able to be attacked by land units. You also have a bunch of forage bushes. I mean, you know, it's not the greatest map ever, but I don't think it's like... It doesn't make me want to hit my head against the computer like the D tier maps. Sandbank D tier. Yeah. So you start on like 2 separate islands that are like at the edges of the map with a river in the middle, and that river is further divided by a bunch of mangrove trees, which I don't really even know what that adds at all, but that has a lot of the wood in for late game. Then you have a lot of random lakes and stuff, but those can sometimes crop into the river and like give one team extra areas where they can be attacked on water. It's not a great map. I guess it's not the worst map ever. But yeah, I don't like it. Scandi. I'm going to put it in B tier. I think the biggest problem with the map is civ diversity, because Mongols are really way too strong on it. Just because, you know, it's a ton of hunt, but no forage bushes. Also, you can have some imbalanced generation as far as like not having many fish because of like ice flows on the 2 different bodies of water. But other than that, it is actually a pretty good map. It's on the more closed side of things, but there's a lot of different strategies. I think it's one of those maps that's better for team games than 1v1s. Because you can have different orientations where like you have maybe both teams have to fight over a lane of water, or both teams have like a safe lane of water and you can go for like a big fish boom or something like that. It's not a bad map. I don't mind it in the map pool every now and again. And I think that's just the big distinction for me is B tier maps are ones that I don't mind having in the map pool every so often. And yeah, Scandinavia is fine. Seasons. D tier. The only interesting thing about the map is that it can spawn in 4 different seasons with different foliage and stuff. Other than that, it's pretty much Highland with a bigger river. Yeah, not too thrilling. Serengeti. Also B tier, I think. I think it's a better version of Kilimanjaro, which is kind of replacing it in this month's map pool. probably the most aggressive open map there is. There's very rarely shorefish, though, that you have to worry about. Map control is already very important just because it's so open and you don't want to get raided at home. You don't need, like, the extra mountain in the middle, in my opinion. There's already hills and stuff. There is also only one elephant, but you have tons of zebra and ostrich around, so that can kind of make it a little less bad if you get lamed. Although laming is still obviously very powerful on the map. You know, it's fine. It's just a very, very aggressive map. Sherwoodforest. Also going to be going in D tier. Wow, we are already 35 minutes into this video. There are a lot of maps. I'm not very good at being brief, am I? There's a lot of... It's just like a lot of random little patches of trees, which is just kind of annoying. There are some also ponds for fish as well. It's not Sherwood Heroes, guys. It's Sherwoodforest, so you don't have the hero units. You do start with the hunting wolf, though, which just means you can lame people super easily. I don't really know why that's especially great. Yeah, it's not that great of a map. Shipwreck. I'm actually going to put this one in C tier. There we go. Big ol' C tier. It's another ES map, and I wouldn't say it's like super competitively viable, but it's another one of those maps that's actually, in my opinion, pretty fun for just casual games. You start in the middle, all close together, on, well, an island. Then there are huge, huge shallow crossings that go to the outside of the map where there are a lot more resources. Yeah, I think it's, honestly, it's a pretty fun map. It's not very competitive. It can be pretty imbalanced in terms of just how, like, the shallows spawn relative to players, but I think it's actually a pretty fun map for casual games. Socotra. Oh boy. Yeah, let's put it in F tier. It's not Socotra. Or, not Socotra is a map in Battle of Africa 2 that is going on right now as I am recording this video. Which is pretty much the same as regular Socotra, except instead of it being surrounded by rocks and then water, it's surrounded by trees, which means you can always have a consistent source of wood income. Regular Socotra, you don't have that. You have no consistent wood income, and it's just a complete mess. And it's like one of those maps that's so unfun just because you have no space and it's just so aggressive and bleh. Steppe, C tier. Again, I would like the map a lot more if it was just more balanced in terms of civilizations. I remember seeing this map in so many tourneys, and it was just Chinese and Mongols all day long, because it is Nomad Start, but all of your villagers are together, so Chinese are going to be extra good there. And then, that was Spanish sometimes as well, actually, but yeah, Mongols with all of the hunt in the middle. But it is a balanced map, so long as, like, you don't have... If you have, like, hidden civs, or, like, both players can pick Mongols or whatever, I think it's a fine map for, like, team games. Or if, like, you ban Mongols even, I think it would be an even better map. But I am not the biggest fan of it. But I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It's been in a lot of tournaments. Team Islands. I'm actually going to put it in A tier. I think it is the better version of Islands if you're playing a team game. I think it's worse than regular Islands if you're playing a 1v1, but in a team game, you actually have the potential for trade, so I think it's perfectly fine full water map. You have less water on it overall compared to regular islands, but you do have the ability to raid your opponents at the back, so it's not that bad. Wood distribution can sometimes be an issue, but overall, you know, if you're having a team game tournament and you're having like a map pool, I think Team Islands is always going to be a good fit. The Unknown. Where did I put Mega Random? C tier, I think? Yeah, let's put it there. It's pretty much Mega Random, but with more consistently water, and I think you often start in winter. I don't know, it's kind of just a weird map, but if you like the really, really random stuff, then you might like the map. Valley... B tier. It's weird because was it NAC 3 or Hidden Cup 3? I don't remember. One of those two tournaments had Valley. Oh no, it was NAC 3. You'd think I would remember it since I cast it. Where it's funny because you'd think that Mongols were banned because there's all the hunt in the middle, so you just pick Mongols every time. But with Mongols banned, it pretty much just became Arabia, and it was interesting because players would often just go fast castle on it, and just not worry about the middle at all, and there would be so many games where people just didn't fight over the middle, which I thought was kind of funny. But, you know, especially like if you can ban Mongols, it's a fine map. It's a fine, you know, open map with a little bit more incentive to go for the middle. Water Nomad, gimme S tier. No. Okay, honestly, guys, I am going to put it in C tier, just because I actually like Water Nomad. It's not a competitive map. I never want it in a ranked map pool, but for, you know, just for fun games, yeah, it's pretty fun. And quick little brag, in my first ever community game that I ever played on anyone's stream, it was T90's stream many moons ago, before he got super big. I mean, he was still fairly big, but no one knew who I was then. I mean, I was just someone who lurked in the community. T90 did like a community game thing on Water Nomad, and Miguel played in it. And Miguel was like crushing most people, but then I ended up winning because I ended up actually beating Miguel as Turks even, in just like a super slow, really crazy for me to play game. But that was way back in HD in the dark days. But that little tale aside, it's not a competitive map. It just can be fun. Wolf Hill, C tier. The relics make for some interesting potential. And it's also the hill aspect, but you can't build on the hill. I mean, it's not the worst thing ever. It's in the map pool right now for team games. I don't really know why, but it's like, it's not too imbalanced, so I can't really put it in D tier, where all of these maps can be pretty imbalanced, or just are super unfun. It's just... And last but not least, we have the Yucatan. What I wanted in a map pool? Not really. Okay, C tier it is. There's a ton of food. You essentially get double food, like double sheep counts, double boar counts, double forage bush counts, and there's a ton of wood, and there are these little waterways that don't have any fish in them, but they can make the game super choke pointy, or like if you dock them, it can be just really hard to attack people, so it's not like the greatest map ever. Mongols are also super crazy strong on it, as are Franks to some degree. And I mean, all the civs that have early food bonuses are just extra good on it. But it's not the worst map ever. I mean, it's all right. It's been around since AOC. All right, let's zoom out a little bit so we can see this this beauty. Here it is, guys. The full tier list. 43 minutes of me talking about random freaking maps. So the majority of maps falling in C tier, and then pretty similar with B and D tier. A tier, you know, several maps. S tier, a few maps. Honestly, I think I did a fairly decent job of like balancing the distribution of all the maps. I mean, I'll just run through it one more time, see if there's anything I disagree with. Maybe in another light I would put Four Lakes in S tier, but I feel like maybe it's just because I'm sick of it right now. But I'm putting it. I think putting it in A tier is fine. Actually, should I put BF in A tier? Because if I gave Islands the benefit of, if you like this sort of map, it's like the best example of it. If I said the same thing for Black Forest, I don't think I could actually put it in B tier. I think I actually should be putting it in A tier. Because if you like this sort of map, it is probably the best version of the sort of closed, you know, boomy sort of map. And there's a reason people play a ton of Black Forest, right? So maybe I was being too unfair due to my personal bias against Black Forest, and for that I apologize. Everything else is fine. Yeah, all of the B tier maps and above I'm fine having in a map pool every so often. All the C tier maps, like, it's okay maybe once in a while to have in the map pool, but definitely not more than a month. And that's only with some of the maps. But yeah, I mean, at least the maps, you can have good games on all the C tier maps, in my opinion. not so the D tier maps, or at least having a good game on it would be incredibly rare. And then the F tier maps are just kind of a joke. But yeah, this is going to be my final tier list, guys. I will put the link to the template I used. Again, thanks to Grisha for making that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, this is all just my opinion, so let me know in the comments what your favorite maps and or least favorite maps are. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.